I reincarnated as the tragic female lead, but the villainess was too fine to ignore. Arya Lancaster had died. Well, maybe not died. She wasn't entirely sure. One minute she had been a 25-year-old office worker who survived on instant noodles, caffeine, and questionable sleep schedules. The next, she woke up beneath a crystal chandelier the size of her old apartment. Either I've gone insane or I won the cosmic lottery. Her voice sounded different. Softer. Prettier. Suspiciously expensive. Arya sat up. Long black hair cascaded over her shoulders. Her hands were delicate. Smooth. The hands of someone who had never carried groceries up 6 flights of stairs. Slowly, she stumbled toward the mirror. Then froze. Green eyes stared back. Honey-warm skin. Long lashes. A tiny dimple. A face so beautiful she nearly apologized to it. No way! She recognized that face. She knew this girl. Because she'd spent the last week screaming at her through a phone screen. The tragic female lead. The female lead from the novel she'd recently binge-read. The same female lead who spent 200 chapters chasing Lucas Bennett. The same Lucas Bennett who possessed all the emotional depth of a decorative spoon. Arya grabbed her head. Oh no! She remembered everything. The novel. The plot. The suffering. The tears. The misunderstandings. The endless chasing. And worst of all, the male lead. No. Arya pointed at her reflection. We are not doing that. The reflection agreed. Mostly because it was her. The door suddenly burst open. Arya! A beautiful woman rushed inside. Behind her followed a tall man with matching green eyes. The girl's parents. Victoria Lancaster. Alexander Lancaster. The novel's loving billionaire parents. The parents the original female lead somehow ignored while spending all her energy chasing Lucas. Arya stared. Victoria stared back. Then immediately grabbed Arya's face. You look pale. Alexander looked horrified. Should I call a doctor? A doctor! Victoria rounded on him. One doctor? What if she needs specialists? You're right. Of course I'm right. Arya blinked. Twice. 3 times. Nobody had looked at her like this before. Like she was precious. Important. Loved. Something in her chest softened. And for the first time since arriving in this world, she smiled. A genuine smile. Victoria froze. Alexander froze. Then both parents looked suspiciously emotional. Oh no, Arya muttered. They're crying. Victoria immediately denied it. I'm not crying. You absolutely are. It's allergies. Mother, we're indoors. Indoor allergies exist. Alexander nodded. They do. You two are ridiculous. And for the first time in either life, Arya laughed. 3 months later, Arya had successfully avoided Lucas Bennett. A personal achievement. She deserved a trophy. The original novel had practically revolved around him. The original Arya followed him everywhere. Defended him. Loved him. Worshipped him. Current Arya. She crossed the street when she saw him. Life was peaceful. Until Victoria dragged her to a charity gala. Mother. Yes. I don't want to go. Victoria adjusted her earrings. I wasn't asking. That's dictatorship. It's motherhood. Same thing. Victoria kissed her forehead. You'll survive. Arya wouldn't. Because the moment she entered the ballroom, she saw her. The villainess. Evelyn Hart. The woman walked through the crowd like she owned gravity itself. Black suit. Long black hair. Hazel eyes. Tall. Elegant. Dangerously attractive. The room practically tilted. Arya forgot how breathing worked. The novel had described Evelyn as cold. Cruel. Manipulative. The novel was a liar. Because standing before her was quite possibly the most beautiful woman Arya had ever seen. Oh. That was all her brain managed. Just. Oh. Evelyn's gaze shifted, meeting hers. And suddenly the entire ballroom disappeared. Arya looked away first. Coward. Absolute coward. Unfortunately, Evelyn had noticed. Across the room, the CEO stood perfectly still. Sebastian Cross nearly choked on his champagne. Did Evelyn Hart just stare at someone? Adrian looked up. She did. Should we be concerned? Terrified. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued staring. Arya was laughing at something Victoria said. Her smile appeared, that tiny dimple. And something dangerous happened. Evelyn Hart forgot what Victoria Lancaster had just said. For the first time in years, the youngest CEO in the country was distracted by one woman, and unfortunately for everyone else, once Evelyn Hart wanted something, she rarely stopped. Top comment. Evelyn saw one dimple and forgot her entire quarterly report. 42.8K likes. Second comment. Lucas hasn't even appeared and he's already losing. 39.4K likes. Third comment. Victoria is my favorite character. 37.2K likes. The following Monday, Arya arrived on campus with an iced coffee in one hand and absolutely no desire to interact with Lucas Bennett. Unfortunately, the universe seemed determined to test her patience. Arya! She kept walking. Arya! Still walking. Arya! She finally turned around. Lucas stood there with his usual group of followers. Dylan, Brandon, Marcus, collectively known as the Three Horsemen of Unsolicited Opinions. Lucas frowned. You ignored me. Arya took a sip of coffee. Correct. His eye twitched. For some reason, that annoyed him more than any argument ever had. Back when she used to follow him around, he couldn't stand it. Now that she completely ignored him, he hated that too. Arya continued walking. Dylan immediately scoffed. She's definitely trying to get your attention. Obviously, Brandon agreed. Marcus nodded. Classic. Arya stopped, turned around, and stared at them. The three men instantly straightened. Because despite being beautiful, Arya Lancaster possessed the terrifying aura of a woman who could verbally fold people into furniture. Question. Nobody answered. If I ignore a stray cat, am I trying to attract the cat? Dylan blinked. What? No, seriously. She looked genuinely curious. If I avoid something, refuse to speak to it, actively walk away from it. She pointed at Lucas. How exactly does that translate into wanting it? The silence was glorious. Students nearby started listening. Lucas's ears turned red. Arya smiled. See? That's the confusing part. Then she left. Half the crowd burst out laughing. Lucas stood frozen. For the first time in his life, he'd been publicly roasted by someone he couldn't insult back. Because unfortunately, everything she'd said made sense. When Arya got home that evening, she found Victoria sitting in the living room. Her mother was reading a magazine, or pretending to. The smirk on her face gave her away. You heard. I hear everything. Mother, I have sources. You bribed people. I prefer the term networking. Arya dropped onto the couch. Victoria immediately handed her a bowl of strawberries. Thank you. You're welcome. A pause. Then, I also heard you compared Lucas Bennett to a stray cat. Arya choked. Victoria looked proud. That was my daughter. Meanwhile, across the city, Evelyn Hart was reviewing quarterly reports. Sebastian sat across from her. You're smiling. I'm not. You absolutely are. I'm working. You're thinking about Arya. Evelyn continued typing. Sebastian gasped dramatically. Oh my God. No response. Oh my God, you like her. Nothing. Evelyn. Silence. Evelyn. The CEO finally looked up. Slowly. Calmly. Dangerously. Sebastian immediately sat back down. Understood. A pause. Then. She's very pretty. Sebastian dropped his tablet. You admitted it. The problem started 3 weeks later. Arya was peacefully attending a university networking event. Everything had been fine. Until Lucas arrived, with a girl hanging from his arm. A girl who was very obviously there to make Arya jealous. The girl smiled sweetly. Lucas smiled smugly. Arya looked confused. Who is that? Lucas's smile vanished. What? Your cousin. No. Friend. No. Then why are you looking at me like that? The girl started laughing. Actually laughing. Lucas looked offended. The girl immediately removed her arm from his. Oh my God! What? You brought me here because you wanted to make another girl jealous? Lucas froze. The girl stared, then looked at Arya, then back at Lucas, then back at Arya. She's literally prettier than you. The entire room went silent. Arya covered her mouth. The girl pointed at Lucas. And she's taller. What does that have to do with anything? A lot, apparently. Lucas looked moments away from combusting. The girl grabbed her purse. You know what? Good luck with whatever this is. Then she left, leaving Lucas standing alone. Again. Top comment. Even the jealousy bait switched teams. 52.3k likes. Second comment. Lucas is losing women he wasn't even dating. 49.8k likes. Third comment. Aria's biggest enemy isn't Lucas. It's trying not to laugh. 47.2k likes. A month later, the university announced its biggest event of the year, the annual Future Leaders Summit. Students immediately lost their minds. The guest list included politicians, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders. But only one name mattered: Evelyn Hart, youngest CEO in the country's history, Harvard graduate, business prodigy, owner of Hart Industries. Campus group chats exploded. Girls were screaming. Boys were screaming. Professors were somehow also screaming. Aria stared at the announcement, then at her phone, then back at the announcement. Sophia leaned over her shoulder. You know her. I know her. You have her number. I have her number. You ate dinner at her house. I ate dinner at her house. Sophia grabbed Aria's shoulders. Do you understand how insufferable that makes you? The day of the summit arrived. The auditorium was packed. Students filled every seat. Faculty members occupied entire rows. The atmosphere felt more like a celebrity appearance than a business conference. Lucas sat near the front. Naturally, he considered himself future CEO material, despite having never successfully led anything except a group project into disaster. Dylan sat beside him. You think she'll notice us? Lucas adjusted his watch. Of course. Dylan nodded immediately. True. Marcus nodded too. You're basically her type. Nobody knew what her type actually was, least of all Lucas. Backstage, Evelyn adjusted the cuffs of her black blazer. Sebastian was already laughing. What? You've checked your appearance 6 times. No, I haven't. You absolutely have. I wanted to look professional. You wanted Aria to think you looked nice. Evelyn looked away. Sebastian gasped dramatically. Oh my God. Stop. You have a crush. Sebastian. A crush. Sebastian. On Aria. Evelyn stood. Sebastian immediately shut up. Self-preservation instincts remained undefeated. The moment Evelyn walked onto the stage, the entire auditorium erupted. Students cheered. Phones appeared instantly. Even professors looked impressed. Aria sat 3 rows back, trying very hard not to stare, failing spectacularly. Evelyn looked confident, elegant, completely composed. Then her eyes found Aria, and for half a second, she smiled, a tiny smile, barely visible. But Aria saw it, and nearly forgot how oxygen worked. Unfortunately, Lucas saw it too, and immediately misunderstood, because of course he did. Did you see that? Dylan nodded. I did. Marcus looked impressed. She smiled at you. Lucas smiled smugly. I know. 3 rows away. Naomi nearly fell out of her chair. Sophia buried her face in her hands. Aria looked physically pained, because Evelyn had been looking directly at her. Not Lucas. Not even close. Yet somehow the man had reached the opposite conclusion. It was almost impressive. The question and answer session began. Several students asked normal questions. Business strategies, market trends, leadership. Then Lucas stood. The room immediately grew quieter. Not because anyone was interested, mostly because everyone sensed incoming embarrassment. Lucas smiled confidently. Ms. Hart. Evelyn nodded politely. I've always admired successful women. Sebastian immediately lowered his head. He knew disaster when he saw it. Lucas continued. I was wondering what qualities you look for in a partner. The silence was immediate, brutal. Professors blinked. Students exchanged looks. Aria covered her face. Sophia whispered, No way. Naomi whispered, He's actually doing this. Lucas remained completely unaware. Evelyn stared at him, expressionless. Then, I value intelligence. Lucas nodded. Of course. I value kindness. Another nod. I value humility. The nod slowed. I value self-awareness. The nod stopped. I also prefer people who understand professional boundaries and height. The entire auditorium exploded. Laughter echoed everywhere. Even some professors looked entertained. Lucas sat down. Slowly, painfully, as realization began loading, like extremely weak Wi-Fi. Later that afternoon, Arya was walking across campus when she spotted Evelyn near the administration building. The CEO stood alone, checking emails, looking impossibly attractive. As usual, Arya approached. "You caused a scene." Evelyn looked up. "I did. The entire university is making memes." "Oh." The guilt lasted approximately 3 seconds. Then Arya started laughing. Evelyn watched her, completely distracted. Again, there should probably be a support group for people affected by Arya's smile. "Evelyn." "Yes." "Would you like to get coffee?" The CEO froze. A very noticeable freeze. Then, "Yes." Immediately. Far too quickly. Arya grinned. "You answered that suspiciously fast." Evelyn looked away. "I like coffee. You hate coffee." "You remember that?" Arya's smile softened. "Of course I do." For some reason, that answer made Evelyn happier than closing $1 billion deal. Top comment. Evelyn got offered coffee and reacted like she won the Olympics. 68.4K likes. Second comment. Lucas got rejected in front of the entire university. 64.1K likes. Third comment. Not Evelyn smiling at Arya and Lucas collecting the wrong answer. 59.9K likes. Fourth comment. Self-awareness was literally on the requirements list, and he still failed. 57.3K likes. The coffee date somehow turned into dinner. Then dinner somehow turned into a walk. Then the walk somehow turned into Arya realizing it was nearly midnight. "You have work tomorrow." "So do you. You're a CEO. And you run a multinational company." Evelyn looked genuinely confused. "That doesn't mean I can't walk you home." Arya smiled. "Dangerous. Very dangerous. The kind of smile that caused billionaires to malfunction." Evelyn immediately looked away. Again, the next morning, the entire university was still discussing the summit. Unfortunately, someone had posted clips online, including Lucas's question, including Evelyn's answer, especially the height comment. Students were ruthless. Arya was peacefully eating breakfast when Sophia burst into her apartment, without knocking, because apparently doors meant nothing to her. "IT has 2 million views." Arya nearly dropped her spoon. "What has 2 million views?" Sophia shoved her phone forward. The top comment read, She listed requirements and Lucas failed like a multiple-choice question with no correct answer. 212K likes. Arya choked. Meanwhile, across the city, Edward Hart was laughing so hard he nearly fell off his chair. His younger sister sat across from him. Expressionless, Edward pointed at the screen. You said height. I did. You actually said height. I prefer taller people. Edward laughed harder. Evelyn's eye twitched. You are 29 years old. And you're in love. I am not. You literally smiled at her. Silence. Edward grinned. I knew it. The Hart family mansion was chaos. Mostly because Eleanor Hart had discovered Arya existed. And immediately became obsessed. She's beautiful. Ethan nodded. Very. She's polite. Very. She volunteers. Very. She called me ma'am. Eleanor looked emotional. Nobody calls me ma'am anymore. Ethan placed a hand over his heart. Our future daughter-in-law has manners. Evelyn nearly walked into a wall. At university. Lucas was having a terrible week. A deserved terrible week. Everywhere he went, people stared, whispered, laughed. The memes had escaped containment. Dylan looked concerned. Maybe it'll die down. A student walked past, looked directly at Lucas, and said, Professional boundaries. Before continuing, Marcus sighed. Never mind. Things got worse. Because that Friday, Arya's friend group decided to meet. Sophia arrived first. Then Naomi. Then Julian Reyes. The final addition to the group. Julian was 6 feet tall. Ridiculously handsome. Future architect. Owner of the most annoyingly perfect jawline Arya had ever seen. Most importantly, he was completely platonic. The moment Julian sat down, Sophia pointed dramatically. There. Arya blinked. What? The perfect man. Julian looked offended. I'm right here. Sophia ignored him. He cooks. True. He cleans. True. He has emotional intelligence. True. He respects women. Julian nodded proudly. I do. Sophia looked at Arya. So why did the original story choose Lucas? Nobody had an answer. Not even God. God was onto something. A few tables away, Lucas stared. His eye twitched. Who's that? Dylan followed his gaze. The guy. Yeah. Don't know. Lucas frowned. The unfamiliar feeling in his chest returned. Jealousy. Unfortunately, he still hadn't realized he had no claim to Arya whatsoever. Across town, Evelyn was meeting one of her closest friends, Charlotte Sinclair, former Harvard classmate, business consultant, model-level beautiful, professional menace. Charlotte took one look at Evelyn, then sighed dramatically. You're in love. Evelyn immediately stood. I'm leaving. You bought her favorite tea. Silence. You memorized her class schedule. Silence. You know her coffee order. Silence. Charlotte pointed accusingly. You're down horrendous. Evelyn sat back down. Defeated. Sunday arrived. And with it, the Lancaster Family Charity Gala, the biggest event of the season. Every major business family attended, including the Harts, including Lucas's parents, who still somehow believed their son had a chance. The delusion was hereditary. Arya entered wearing a dark emerald gown. The entire ballroom paused. Green eyes, black hair, elegant smile. Even Victoria looked impressed. My daughter is beautiful. Alexander looked emotional. My baby. She's 24. Still my baby. Then Evelyn arrived. Black suit, as usual, looking unfairly attractive. The room collectively lost its mind. Sophia grabbed Naomi. Look! I have eyes. Look harder. The banquet hall was enormous. Executives filled the room. Investors mingled. Managers chatted. And Lucas was bored out of his mind. Until the announcer spoke. Please welcome the CEO of Hart Industries. Polite applause followed. Then the doors opened. And Lucas froze. Because walking toward the stage was Evelyn Hart. Black suit. Hazel eyes. Confident stride. The same woman he'd spent months trying to impress. The same woman who publicly roasted him. The same woman who was dating Arya. Lucas laughed nervously. Wait! Nobody answered. Wait! His father suddenly looked interested in the ceiling. His mother looked interested in the floor. Wait! On stage, Evelyn accepted the microphone. Calm, elegant, completely unaware that a man was having a spiritual crisis in row 7. Or perhaps completely aware. Hard to tell. Lucas slowly turned toward his parents. She's the CEO. Silence. She's the CEO. More silence. You work for her? His mother sighed. We thought you knew. How would I know? His father looked offended. You never asked. Lucas felt his soul leave his body. He thought back. Every interaction. Every embarrassing moment. Every failed attempt to impress her. Every time he acted arrogant. Every time he interrupted her. Every time he... Oh my God! Meanwhile, across the room, Sebastian spotted him. Then immediately texted Edward. Sebastian, look at table 7. Edward. Loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. Sebastian. He's buffering. Edward. Let him. Things somehow became worse. Because after the banquet, employees were allowed to greet the CEO. Lucas's parents joined the line, dragging him with them. Against his will. Against nature. Against common sense. Evelyn greeted them politely. Mr. Bennet. Mrs. Bennet. Miss Hart. Then her eyes landed on Lucas. A pause. A very, very, very long pause. Lucas wished the floor would open and consume him. Mr. Bennet. Her tone was perfectly professional, which somehow hurt more. Miss Hart. Evelyn nodded. Professional boundaries. Sebastian immediately choked on his drink. Edward walked away, laughing. Charlotte had to physically sit down. Lucas nearly died. Top comment. The height comment wasn't the fatal hit. This was 91.4K likes. A month later, Arya and Evelyn's wedding invitations were delivered. Elegant. Simple. Beautiful. Gold lettering. Cream paper. Victoria personally approved the design. 3 times. One invitation arrived at the Bennet residence. Lucas opened it absent-mindedly, expecting another corporate event. Instead, he saw bride, Arya Lancaster, partner, Evelyn Hart. Lucas blinked. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, he flipped the invitation over. As if another groom might be hiding on the back. Nothing. He read it again. Bride. Arya Lancaster. Partner. Evelyn Hart. Again. Bride. Arya Lancaster. Partner. Evelyn Hart. Again. Bride. Arya Lancaster. Partner. Evelyn Hart. His mother entered the room. Oh, the invitation arrived. Lucas looked up. Slowly. Like a haunted Victorian child. They're actually getting married. Yes. They're serious. Obviously. They're really getting married. Lucas! What? They got engaged 4 months ago. His father walked past, saw the invitation, and sighed. Son! Lucas looked hopeful. Finally. Advice. Comfort. Support. His father patted his shoulder. You fumbled. Then walked away. Lucas sat there, staring at the invitation. For nearly 20 minutes. Across town, Arya was laughing on Evelyn's couch, completely unaware that somewhere in the city, a man was losing an argument against a piece of paper. Top comment. Not him checking the back for another groom loudly crying face. 187.2k likes. Second comment. You fumbled. Lucas's father, 2026. 176.8k likes. Third comment. Bro got rejected by a wedding invitation. 169.5k likes. Fourth comment. The invitation had better communication skills than Lucas. 162.1k likes. Fifth comment. Somewhere in the city a man is fighting cardstock and losing. 159.8k likes. The wedding reception was magnificent. Victoria Lancaster had planned it, which meant the event looked less like a wedding and more like a royal summit. Crystal chandeliers, live orchestra, gardens illuminated by thousands of lights, food that probably cost more than Lucas's monthly rent, which was exactly why Lucas attended, along with Dylan and Marcus. We're only here to be supportive, Dylan said while carrying his fourth plate. Marcus nodded. Very supportive. Lucas grabbed another dessert. Nobody believed them. Unfortunately, the moment they entered, they were met with an unpleasant reality. Everyone here was tall. Suspiciously tall. Unnaturally tall. Edward Hart, 6 feet 2 inches. Julian Reyes, 6 feet 0 inches. Ethan Hart, 6 feet 1 inch. Alexander Lancaster, 6 feet 3 inches. Naomi, 5 feet 11 inches. Even Sophia somehow looked intimidating in heels. Lucas looked around. Slowly, carefully, then sighed. I'm in a forest. Meanwhile, the bridal table was chaos. Sophia was crying. Again. Charlotte was crying. Again. Sebastian was somehow crying harder than both of them. Combined. Pull yourself together. Adrian handed Sebastian a napkin. You've been crying for 40 minutes. It's beautiful. It's a wedding. It's their wedding. Adrian regretted speaking. A few minutes later, Lucas made another terrible decision. A recurring hobby. He accidentally wandered near the family tables. Victoria noticed first. Of course she did. Victoria noticed everything. She took a sip of champagne, looked at Alexander, then looked at Lucas, then back at Alexander. Oh! Alexander followed her gaze, then winced. The tutorial level arrived. Victoria nearly dropped her glass laughing. Across the table, Edward heard, immediately choked. Eleanor looked confused. The tutorial level. Edward pointed. Realization hit instantly. Oh! The entire heart table turned. Like synchronized swimmers. Lucas wanted the earth to consume him. Unfortunately, it got worse. Because Julian arrived, holding drinks, looking like the human embodiment of every quality Lucas lacked. Sophia pointed dramatically. There he is. Lucas froze. Again. Julian handed Arya and Evelyn their drinks, then immediately received a side hug from Arya, a grateful smile from Evelyn, a pat on the shoulder from Alexander, and approval from both families. Lucas watched. Silently. Dylan leaned over. That guy's popular. Shut up. Then Naomi arrived. Tall. Elegant. Terrifying. She looked at Lucas. Then at Dylan. Then at Marcus. Why are they here? Nobody had an answer. Even Adrian finally joined in. The usually quiet businessman looked toward Lucas, then toward Evelyn, then toward Arya. He's still buffering. Sebastian laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. The final blow arrived when Victoria stood to make a toast. The entire reception quieted. Victoria smiled. Elegant. Dangerous. Iconic. My daughter spent years looking for someone who would choose her. Arya immediately got emotional. Evelyn squeezed her hand. Victoria continued. And fortunately, she looked directly at Evelyn. When she finally found that person, she had excellent taste. The entire room applauded. Lucas looked down at his plate. Dylan awkwardly ate a bread roll. Marcus suddenly became fascinated by the ceiling. And for the first time in his life, Lucas Bennett understood something. The story had never been about losing Arya. It was about Arya finding people who truly loved her. Her family, her friends, and Evelyn. Also, the food was excellent. Final top comment. Lucas came for free food and left with character development. 487.4K likes. Second comment. The entire Hart Lancaster bloodline looked at him like a wildlife documentary. 472.9K likes. Third comment. Adrian finally spoke and chose violence. 451.6K likes. Fourth comment. Victoria calling him the tutorial level is now canon. 439.2K likes. Fifth comment. Bro wasn't the male lead. He was the loading screen. 421.8K likes. Sixth comment. I'm in a forest. Lucas Bennett after discovering everyone was taller than him. 400.1K likes.